What's going on, guys? We are coming to you live, and this is going to be a different game here. This is going to be me playing the Ninja Katsu the Wanderer. Most of you have seen some of the games. You know, if you've been following the channel, I shouldn't say most of you, but if you've been following the channel, you might know that Warrior is my favorite class. I also like Ninja. Ninja historically has been weak to Warrior, so I decided I was going to try to build a ninja deck that could do well in normal matchups and could also kind of pivot and be able to face warrior effectively as well. So we will see if I succeeded. I have recorded 3 games here. These were classic constructed games, but we were playing pretty fast. And so I played 3 games with my new ninja deck against Will, who is a fairly experienced warrior player, I believe, on the online meta at least. And so we'll see how I did with Ninja versus Warrior using this new custom deck. And the interesting thing to note also is I do think I am by no means a hardened veteran of Ninja, so that should become obvious as you see the footage, as I do think I definitely make some mistakes. So if there's any Ninja players here watching the stream, feel free to correct me on any mistakes that I may have made. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to the broadcast. Here we go. Ninja versus Warrior. I am the Ninja. So a brief overview of this matchup. Traditionally, this is considered hard for Ninja unless they play a very control deck. I want to play an aggro deck. And so I am playing an aggro ninja deck into warrior. This is typically considered a bad matchup because some of the best cards for aggro ninja are actually going to be cards that only block for 2, and having a bunch of 2 blocks against a warrior is quite dangerous. Additionally, if you take defense reactions, they can kind of slow you down. So this time I choose to go first, and what I'm going to do with my first turn is I'm just going to go for some Kadachi pokes. And these can be good to do. You know, often it's risky or pointless to do attacks on the first turn because your opponent can just block them out. But with this ninja deck, I feel fine doing attacks on the first turn because by swinging these Kadachi, my opponent might not want to block them because there's the risk that I'm going to be trying to do some kind of combo. So it might just be an opportunity to chip in some free damage and then put a card in arsenal. So my first Kadachi, he does not block. Now the second Kadachi comes in. Now against the second Kadachi, this very often is something that you want to block because it's going to disable the Mask of Momentum. So one of the fundamental things to consider with Ninja is that if you can land 3 hits in a row, you're going to be able to enable that Mask of Momentum, and that can potentially be very strong. So my opponent in this case doesn't block it, and then I follow up with a Crane Dance for 1, and if this hits, I will draw a card from Mask. And my opponent does block that one. And so I'm going to pass the attack reaction and put a card in arsenal. So I'm putting a Plunder Run in arsenal. I'm trying to get set up for a aggressive turn. If you look at my equipment, I have equipped the Breeze Rider boots and the Breaking Scales, the Mask of Momentum, and the Final Spring Tunic. The unusual one there is the Breeze Rider boots. And Breeze Rider boots are unusual because Snapdragon Scalers kind of does the same sort of job, but a little bit better. However, I have equipped the Breeze Rider boots here because they do have a point of armor, which is going to be useful against a warrior, I feel, and I want to have that little bit of extra defense. Reggie B 06 has sent me 10 bits. Thank you, Reggie B. Much appreciated. Glad to see you supporting the channel. And so now my opponent is coming in with a hit and run into a Dawnblade Swing for 3. And I block it with a card from hand. He then comes in with a Snatch for 4. I use a Sink Below to block the Snatch fully, while also getting a Flick Flack out of hand in the hopes of drawing something a little bit more aggressive. And I do draw a Lord of Wind here. So I'm now thinking, okay, you know, on this turn, you know, maybe I can go for Lord of Wind, 2 Kadachi pokes into Soulbead Strike. You know, it's interesting. One thing I have to consider is whether or not I want to use my Plunder Run now, and the Plunder Run is going to give me +3. I do go for it, so Plunder Run is going to give me +3, and if your next attack action card gets +3, and then if it hits it, we'll draw a card. Kadachi, Soul Bead Strike for 7. If it hits, I will draw a card, and it has go again. So coming in here with the big Soul Bead Strike, trying to get some defense out from my opponent and slow down his pressure. In the War of Aggro decks, you often want to take tempo more than you want to deal damage. So I'm hoping that this will either let me do something nice, or it will use up a bunch of his defense. In this case, it uses up a bunch of defense, which I'm fine with. He blocks for 6, plus an additional block with a point of armor from the Refraction Bolters. And it looks like we maybe forget to put a counter on the Bolters. There we go. Okay. So now my opponent's going to pitch a Overpower and come in with a Dawnblade Strike, buffed by Spoils of War. So this is coming in at strength 5 with go again. All I have to do is block 5 to stop this. I have a lot of stuff that blocks for 3. So that's one of the core changes that I made to this deck. I have a lot of 3 blocks in it, which are going to allow it to have a little bit more resilience than many ninja builds. So then I am left with only a Soul Bead Strike and Torrent of Tempo. I did draw an all-red hand there, I believe, which is a little bit awkward. But actually this is going to be pretty decent. I'm going to throw out the Soul Bead Strike for 4 with go again. 4 with go again on hit. So if my opponent does block this, he will stop it, and I can arsenal the Torrent of Tempo. And if he doesn't block this, I can use my Tunic to throw out the Soul Bead Strike for 5 with go again. So he doesn't block. He's going to take 4. I'm like, okay, time to use the Tunic and throw out the Torrent of Tempo. So 5 go again on hit. I don't have anything to actually use the go again with, unfortunately, so that's a bit of a bust, but it is still going to be a good chunk of damage, and you know, for an all red, for a two red card hand, that ends up being pretty decent. And my opponent is going to just get hit. So I'm ahead on life by 13, which is pretty sweet, but my opponent has more armor than me left, I believe, since I am not a particularly armored build here, and I actually am a particularly armored build for Ninja, but Ninja's not a particularly armored class. And then he is going to come in with a full hand, so this is an opportunity for my opponent to actually get a big advantage. At least in theory, this is a chance for him to swing tempo, even though I'm quite ahead on life. It's now he's going to have a full hand attack on me because he weathered those attacks on the previous turn and just kept going. Okay, so coming in at strength 5 with go again, and if he hits, it will be 2 copper. Thinking about my defense, I have 3 cards that block for 3 and 1 card that blocks for 2. One thing that I could do here is block 5, and then on my turn, E-strike 7. Another thing that I could do is let this hit me and try to block the second one. Kind of depends on what all he has going, but there's definitely a threat of attack reactions or of potential other cards. I end up deciding that I'm going to take this 5, I think. So I say no block. He passes. I take 5. And this is trying to just get some more information about what he's doing here. He does get the copper tokens. These copper tokens don't really do very much. I'm not very worried about him having them. There's a chance that he's playing cash in. Some players do, but it's I think it's still kind of a niche pick to play cash in constructed. If you're playing blitz and you're running a Kasai deck, then by all means cash in is very strong. But for one of these in a constructed deck, I think playing cash in with Dorinthea is a relatively niche pick, though I have seen some players do it. I believe the player who won the Taiwanese Nationals was wielding a single copy of Cash In their Dorinthea deck and was able to score 2 hits with Spoils of War over the course of the game, get that 4 copper, and then get the bonus draws with Cash In later on to buff up a turn. It can be very cool if you do enable that. And then my opponent comes in with a Dawnblade Swing, I believe, for 4. And I decide I'm just going to let that hit me as well. This is a little bullet, actually, to do. But I'm thinking that I want to try and retake tempo myself and then neutralize what my opponent's doing. Definitely not the standard play against a warrior, though. So then I'm going to come in with a Surging Strike for 5. So I'm doing this because I see that I can potentially do full combo. So I have Surging Strike for 5. If it hits, I can discard the E-Strike that I have in hand to get a red Whelming Gust Wave, and then I can play Whelming Gust Wave and then play Magenshi immediately. So in this case, I decide, I'm going to let him hit me. If he has any attack reactions, he's just going to be wasting them for the time being, and I'm going to try to unleash my full Surging Strike combo. Let's see if I can pull that off. 5 go again to start the combo. And these Surging Strikes are sometimes awkward to defend against because if they already have the combo, you don't want to block them. But if they do not yet have the combo, then so if they already have the combo, then you don't want to block them. But if they do not yet have the combo, then not blocking them means that they're going to potentially use Katsu's ability to enable the whelming. So he doesn't block. And I'm actually pretty happy with that because it means that I get to Katsu. Now, normally Enlightened Strike is not a card that you necessarily want to be discarding. But in this situation, it's pretty sweet because I'm going to discard the E-Strike and find a red Whelming Gust Wave and play a red Whelming Gust Wave. So this card is going to be buffed up by my... this card's going to be buffed up. So it is Strength 3 and cost 0. And it has combo. If Surging Strike was the last attack this combat chain, Whelming Gust Wave gains +1, go again, and if this hits, draw a card. So coming in here for 4 damage with the Whelming Gust Wave with go again, and if it hits, it'll draw a card. Pretty sweet. And then I'm going to be able to follow it up with Magenshi Release. So I am unleashing a powerful combo here, and if the Magenshi Release hits, I can potentially get Lord of Wind. So this is definitely a situation that I'm pretty happy about. So yes, he did get a Dawnblade counter, but this is kind of the ninja dream that I'm trying to live here, doing my full Surging Strike combo against him in return. And we'll see how he responds to the incoming threat of Whelming Gust Wave. So normally if you're trying to shut down their attack, you do want to block Whelming Gust Wave, and you also want to block Magenshi Release. But that, takes a lot of tempo to do, and it's possible my opponent here is thinking, okay, I have that counter. I'm going to make the most of that counter. I'm going to hit him hard. So we'll see what happens here. He's weighing his options, thinking about it. It's kind of funny how we've both taken quite a bit of damage, even though this game is very early. I did say this was going to be 3 quick games. So he has already taken 18. I've already taken 9. And we are still quite early in the game, relatively speaking. In fact, I think this is turn 4. Yeah, it should be my turn 4, assuming I never forgot to use Tunic, because I think I used it as soon as I had it with that Soulbead Strike into, turn. So my opponent goes for a double block using his armor. So he's blocking 4 here with armor, so that does block it completely. I'm going to think about it. So in this situation, I could trigger Breaking Scales, and I do choose to do that, going up to 5. But he has a Springboard Somersault from hand that he can use to counter that. So I was hoping to get the hit there, because if I can get that hit in, it's going to give me the extra draw. He did have the defense reaction to stop that. But I'm now going to follow up with Magenshi Release. So this is coming in, and it is Strength 5 with Go Again, and it's going to give me a copy of Lord. It's going to give me as many Lord of Winds as I want on hit. My opponent just lets this hit him, which is a little unorthodox. Sorry. I'm going to back up the thing a bit and try to pause so I can show you guys that card. I'm trying to highlight cards on these recordings to make it easier for the audience if I do go back and broadcast them. Okay, so Magenshi Release, it's a Katsu specialization, so it combos with Whelming Gust Wave, and it becomes Strength 5 with Go Again. And if it hits, search your deck for any number of cards named Lord of Wind, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So that is the Magenshi Release effect, and it's going to allow me to pull those Lord of Wind cards and continue. My opponent does not block. I pass attack reaction. He mistakenly only loses 4 health instead of 5. I think he may have forgotten about the +1 from comp. And that's going to let me pull these Lord of Winds. So, sorry. I think I highlight that again. I'm not sure. I hope I do. There we go. So Lord of Wind is the last stage in the combo. 0 cost card. Also a Katsu specialization. If Magenshi Release was the last attack this combat chain, you may pay X resource points as an additional cost to play Lord of Wind. If you do, shuffle X target cards named Surging Strike, Whelming Gust Wave, and or Magenshi Release from your graveyard into your deck, and then Lord of Wind gains +X. So in this situation, it's actually not as good as it might be in some, because I don't have that many cards in my graveyard. So Surging Strike, Whelming Gust Wave, and Magenshi Release, you want those to be in your graveyard so that you can both replenish your graveyard and get the extra stats. And I actually only pull 2 copies of Lord of Wind for that reason. I want to keep one in the deck. So I end up going for a pitch into a Lord of Wind, and I'm only, I think, able to actually search for one card here. Yeah, so I have one Whelming Gustwave that I defended with earlier, I believe, and that is going to go back into the deck, and so this is a +1 on the Lord of Wind. Not the finest, ideally you would have a bunch of things to return, but it does give it +1, so this is coming in at strength 3, though it does not have go again. Yeah, so 3, no go again. Conceivably, it would have been better here to actually go in with my 2 Karachi pokes and then swing Lord of Wind without using its effect. Or I could actually, yeah, because the combo would then be disabled, but I could swing for it with 2, and if my opponent didn't block, I would trigger a draw from Katsu. So I actually think that I should have not used the combo at that point. I wanted to get that other red Whelming Gustwave back into my deck to enable other combos, but I think in that case it would have been better to switch into the Karachi pokes to do probably some more damage and then potentially get the Mask of Momentum draw if he did not block at least some of that. Okay, so now my opponent weathered the storm to some degree, so now he's going to come in with a hit and run and swinging a Dawnblade that is coming in at strength 4 because it has the +1 counter. So I overblock up to 7, blocking with 2 copies of Soulbead Strike plus a Breeze Rider Boots to block 7, and then he's going to reply with a E-Strike, and he goes for E-Strike 5 and draw. I'm not going to block that, and I take 5. So that was a heavy block for sure. I used 2 pieces of card and 2 cards and a piece of equipment, but I did manage to stop the Dawnblade counter, which I really don't want my opponent to have. Now going into my next turn, I'm thinking, okay, he decided to draw, get that card in Arsenal. Now I'm going to threaten that card in Arsenal with a Command and Conquer, which is going to sap at least some of his tempo, and with some of that tempo taken away from him, he will not be able to put on as much aggression, and hopefully I can soon get back in the driver's seat. Now I do a little misplay here. I pitch the energy potion and play the Command and Conquer immediately. I'm used to playing warrior. With ninja, it would have been better to pitch the energy potion and then first poke with the Karachi for 1 and then play the Command and Conquer. So I could have gotten essentially a free attack for 1 damage in that situation, which would have allowed me to, probably he doesn't block it and I chip in 1 damage, but every piece of point of damage matters in this game if you're trying to wear down your opponent with the Karachi. So that was a bit of a mistake there. I basically did not take an attack that I could have had for free. So my opponent comes in with Scar for 4. I don't block. I'm used to Scar for Scar. It's usually best not to block it. And then it's going to be Dawnblade for 3. And I think I'm going to not block against this either. And then on my next turn, I am going to be able to do a Karachi swing. Or no, actually, I do decide to block with the Ancestral Empowerment, and I think the reason is that I am thinking about my hand here and deciding what to do. I end up he plays a Ironsong Response, and I end up playing a Flick Flack to counter it. There's an argument that I should have saved that and let him break his. There's an argument that I should have saved the Flick Flack, taken 3, let him break his Refraction Bolters, and then used it to counter the buffed Dawnblade swing there. But I decided to use it first to avoid taking the 3 damage. The downside of that approach is I could have essentially traded 3 life for my opponent's Refraction Bolters being broken, and that might have been a good idea. Okay, so this time I'm going to do the play that I messed up and failed to do last time, where I'm going to use the Karachi into Command and Conquer. But I think I'm going to use 2 Karachi swings this time, and then use my Tunic to go up to 2. And then potentially the CNC will give me a card from Mask of Momentum if I do land a hit with it. Okay, so my opponent takes 1, second Karachi swing for 1. He takes 1. Yeah, so now I can use Tunic and then CNC. So this is coming in for 6, and if I hit it, we'll draw a card. Obviously, I'm not actually threatening to destroy my opponent's arsenal because he doesn't have an arsenal, but it's still a good chunk of damage with an opponent on low life. And if he decides to take that damage to try to get aggressive, I will get the draw with Mask of Momentum, which I can potentially put into arsenal. He blocks for 3. So I am going to do 3 damage, get the mask draw. I get a Find Center, which is not a great card to have in arsenal, but I decided to put it there anyway. Maybe thinking about potentially getting the Soulbead Strike 5 Find Center combo later in the game. So my opponent is going to come in here with a swing for 3 from the Dawnblade. I've drawn a bit of an awkward hand here. I have another Fine Center, an Art of War, an Ancestral Empowerment, and a Springboard Somersault. And I've just used my Tunic, which is not where you want to be when you're using that. When you are using that copy of Art of War, this card is a lot better. Sorry, let's back it up a little bit here, and hopefully we will be able to highlight that Art of War for you guys. This is a very complicated card. Okay, so it's an instant that costs 1. Choose 2. And there's 4 things that you choose 2 from. The first one is attack action cards you control gain +1 attack and +1 defense this turn. The second one is the next attack action card you play this turn gains go again. The third one is until end of turn you may defend with attack action cards from arsenal. And the fourth one is you may banish an attack action card from your hand if you do draw 2 cards. So it has a lot of uses, some of which are pretty cool. Unfortunately, it does cost 1 to play it, and I've just used my Tunic. A lot of cards that cost 1 go best with Tunic if you can use it to play them without having to pitch something else. Alas, I end up deciding, no block there. My opponent plays a glint, so he's going to have go again. I'm just going to pass. Unfortunately, the Springboard Somersault that I have in hand would only block for 2 at this phase, so it would not stop the attack completely. So now my opponent is likely going to come in with a Dawnblade swing for 4, and that's exactly what he does. Dawnblade swing for 4. Buffed up by the Brave Forge Bracers. So thinking about my defense here, so one thing that I can actually do is I can use the Art of War to do +1 on block and allow me to use the card in my arsenal to block with, which would not only get a dubious card out of arsenal, but would also allow me to block without triggering reprise. Because with the +1, it would be blocking for 4, which would be enough to stop this attack. Another thing that I could do is use the Art of War, banish the Fine Center in hand, and draw 2 cards with the +1 block as well. This would hopefully allow me to draw at least 1 attack that blocks for 3, which I could then use to block it from hand. The downside is if he has an Ironsong response, I would probably end up still taking the hit. Let's see what I choose to do here. And this is definitely one of the areas where I am a comparative novice when it comes to playing Ninja. I'm not that used to using Art of War, and I don't really know what the most optimal play pattern is. But I end up going for Arsenal of War, block from Arsenal, and block for and +1. And then I'm going to block with that copy of Find Center that I had in Arsenal. So this is actually kind of expensive. It costs me 3 cards. I'm not sure this is the best way to do it. It feels pretty awkward, honestly. But I didn't have a great turn coming up anyway. And now I did manage to stop that attack from potentially landing and getting him the second Dawnblade counter. Now I'm going to go for 2 Kodachi pokes and then put a Springboard Somersault into Arsenal, which I'm honestly fine with. Getting that defense reaction to Arsenal can be pretty important against a warrior. The problem is that I'm not really threatening that much damage at this point. Though my opponent is getting nice and low, he's not yet into the zone where he has to actually block against Kodachi attacks. Or once you get to 4 life, you have to start worrying that your opponent is going to buff a Kodachi attack with a Razor Reflex and kill you. And once you get to 1 life, you have to start blocking every attack regardless of whether you think they have Razor. But we're not there yet. He's low, but he's not that low. So right now I have a big life lead, but my opponent is ahead on tempo, which actually makes it a pretty awkward situation. So he comes in with a Dawnblade swing for 3. I'm not going to block it. No attack reactions. I'm just going to pass. Take the 3, and now he's going to use the Brave Forge Bracers. I do sort of wish, looking back on this, I do sort of wish that I had lost the 3 life to make him use the Bracers earlier and then counter that second swing with Flick Flack, because I think it would be easier it would have been easier to counter it then than it would be to counter it now. So he then hits me with a E-Strike for 5, go again. So now I have to think about how I want to defend against that. And I decided not to block it. And then I throw out the Springboard Somersault here, which I think is actually an error. So I use the Springboard Somersault to block for 4. But the problem is that he's now going to be able to come in with a buffed Dawnblade for 4. So I really wish that I had not spent that Springboard Somersault there and that I could instead spend it here. but that was definitely my error. So not really a situation that I want to be in. I'm thinking about how best to defend here. So one thing that I could do is I could block with one card plus use my tunic on the defense. Another thing that I could do is just let him hit me and try to retake tempo on my own turn. I ultimately decide here that I'm going to... I'm thinking about it, but I ultimately decide that I am going to not block it and let him hit me. Definitely an unconventional move against a Dawnblade swing. But that is what I choose to do here. He gets his +1 counter. I'm hoping to retake tempo with an aggressive turn now. So let's see whether or not I can do it. In retrospect, it was I think it was a big error to use the springboard somersault on that E-strike instead of saving it and playing it on the Dawnblade. Playing on the Dawnblade would have been a lot better in that circumstance. I think I just made kind of an error there, kind of a gaffe, and did not realize that he still had another Dawnblade strike coming. Okay, so then I'm going to go for the 2 Kadachi swings. They're whittling my opponent down. He is getting low. And then I'm going to follow it up with the Whelming Gust Wave coming in for 3, because it does not have the combo enabled. It's just a red coming in for 3. But if it hits, I will draw a card. And I have this nice Razor Reflex in hand to potentially buff it further and get that hit, which would then also allow me to go again. And, that seems like a pretty sweet situation. In retrospect, I think it's quite possible that I should have used the Art of War on this turn in order to discard the Whelming Gust Wave and draw 2 cards and then give my next attack +1 or something. But I think I was thinking this was going to be a pretty solid turn regardless. And an interesting note is that I could still use the Art of War as a buff that would just give it +1 or whatever. So let's see how my opponent defends. I'm hoping he's going to defend with 1 card and I'll get him with the reaction, but he actually overblocks this and has warded off a potential Razor Reflex. So he ends up not getting hit by this. I don't play the Razor. I put the Razor into Arsenal, which is nice. But it's definitely not what I was hoping for tempo wise. I did some damage, or I actually put the Art of War in Arsenal. That makes sense because Art of War can block. Although, I don't know, I would maybe put the Razor in Arsenal because Art of War pitches for more. It's hard to say. In any case, I end up drawing another Art of War, which makes me probably happy that I kept that Razor Reflex in hand. Otherwise, I'd have a hand with only 2 blocking cards against a warrior, which is not where you want to be. So now he's going to come in with a red Warrior's Valor, coming in for a strength 7 and go again on hit. I am a little worried, but I think basically my option here is that I'm going to go for a block for 3, and then I'm going to use this Sink Below, and I'm going to use it to get that other Art of War out of my hand and cycle it. This is one of those cases where Sink Below cycle is actually really good, hopefully getting me a less awkward hand. Unfortunately, I draw a Searching Strike, which does not actually improve it very much, and in some respects is pretty unfavorable. He then hits me with a Ironsong response for +3, and then is going to attack me again for 4. So tough situation here. Or I'm sorry, this is actually for 5 because he has the buff. And so I end up deciding I'm going to take this hit. If I block this, I'm going to be, I will have lost so much tempo. I'm going to take the hit and try to just retake tempo on my turn. My hope is that playing this Art of War that I have in Arsenal, I can do the +1, I can do the discard from hand and draw, and I'm hoping that with the Tunic enabling Art of War, enabling the draw, I'm going to have a surprisingly aggressive turn and can retake tempo, and it's going to be worth giving him those Dawnblade counters. So I say, okay, +1, banish and draw 2, and then I proceed to not draw an aggressive hand. In fact, my hand is extremely awkward and bad. And I now am like, you know what? I think I might lose this game. This is a very bad situation for me to be in at this point. And so then I pitch the Razor and swing for 1. And really not what I was hoping to draw. I was hoping that I would draw something that would allow me to do, for instance, the dream would be something like, okay, I get the draws and I'm going to get like a blue attack that costs 0 and then some attack that costs 1, and I can do Kadachi into that attack and the attack is buffed up. That's absolutely not what happened, though. I had a super awkward and bad turn, and I'm realizing at this point that my faith in Art of War in this situation may have been misplaced. Okay, so now a Ravenous Rabble comes in, and it is going to reveal a card that costs 1. So it's coming in for 4. I block for 3 and take 1. And let's see what my opponent has in store for me now. So one good thing about the deck that I'm playing here is that I do have a bunch of things that block for 3, which is pretty sweet. But, you know, we'll see how exactly they fare. I do also still have a fair amount of armor, so I have 2 block on my mask and then 1 block on my tunic. I search in my opponent's discard and I see that he's played all 3 red Ironsong responses, which is good. It makes the Dawnblade a lot less scary if he does not have resources available and he's coming in with the Dawnblade and has a card. If the opponent still has red Ironsong responses, that's a lot scarier than if they don't, because those can be played for 0 and potentially buff you up a lot. Whereas if they have used all 3 copies of that, then the situation's a lot clearer. Okay. Nevertheless, this is not a good situation to be in. My opponent still has 3 cards left. His Dawnblade is buffed up to strength 5, and I actually only have 2 cards that can block in my hand. So, really a very awkward situation. And here comes a big attack. He's going to play a Warrior's Valor blue, but it's still buffing him up to 6 total. So, strength 6 with the Dawnblade. And I really need to stop this. I can defend only for 6 with the cards in hand. If I had another card that blocked for 3, I would probably dump that potion as well. I am going to be blocking 6, but he plays a Singing Steelblade for +1 and then searches, and if he has a Ironsong response blue, I'm dead. He does not have it though. It is a glint, but that's going to give him a card draw, and I just say, GG, forgot about Glint. Very brutal situation. I had thought about, does he have the ability to get that Ironsong response? But then I say, I don't know if it matters. Just the hit is good enough. I should have actually overblocked in this situation. I should have overblocked with my mask and or tunic to safeguard myself against a potential attack reaction, but I got like way too aggressive in this game. I don't like, looking back on it, I don't really know what I was thinking. I was letting him get Dawnblade counters that I could have prevented, and that was imprudent. So I was thinking, because I'm also an aggro deck and I had such a big life lead, I was thinking that it was going to be okay to let him get some hits and then come back swinging, but I did not come back swinging as hard as I had hoped. And then late in the game, letting him hit me real hard and then go for that turn where I played the Art of War, it did not work out for me at all. I got killed. So that, if I had drawn differently from that Art of War, it might have put me in a good spot. But like, you shouldn't rely on stuff like that. And in that case, my reliance on it led to my demise, as I drew a really awkward hand, did not retake tempo at all, and then got killed. So, bit of a lesson there, I feel. Alright, so that was my first game with this deck. Not an inspiring performance at all. But I'm going to come back and we'll see if I can do again. So we both roll a 10, and then I roll a 3. So my opponent's definitely winning that roll off. And he's going to have me go first. So I'm like, okay, let's see what I can do. So first run for the anti-warrior aggro ninja, not a success in the least. Second run, let's see if I can do better. So this time I'm going to lead off with a a Kadachi swing for 1, pitching a blue Soulbead Strike. So the core of this build is running more cards that block for 3 than normal and having a bunch of defense reactions that I can sideboard into and become more mid-range against warriors. So I still have a bunch of aggressive stuff, but I'm sideboarding out my yellow Surging Strikes and my red leg taps, which I normally have in there, but are getting cut in this matchup because they block for 2, and you really don't want to have stuff that blocks for 2 against warriors. So I've basically shifted into a deck that has a higher density of things that block for 3 instead of things that block for 2 in order to try and be less weak on the defense. Last game, I definitely was I definitely did not handle it so well. But we'll see if I can do better this time. So I end up scoring 2 Kadachi hits, I believe. And then I throw out a Megenshi, which does get blocked. My opponent comes in with a Scar for a Scar. I'm going to let him hit me with that, taking 4. And then we're going to see a Dawnblade swing for 3. So Scar for a Scar, for those who might not be familiar, is a 0-cost attack that comes in at strength 4. And if you have less life than your opponent, it gains Go Again. So a very strong card. And then Dawnblade swing for 3. I say no blocks and let it hit me for 3. That's often a good move against a warrior. I want to make him either show me the glint or use the refraction bolters there. Okay. Looking at my hand here. This is pretty sweet. I'm going to be able to do a Kadachi into a Torrent of Tempo here, I believe. Kadachi, yep. 1 Go Again. So this is kind of the core of Ninja. I have a Surging Strike in Arsenal, actually, and I end up using that instead. So the core of Ninja is these Kadachi with Go Again, poking the opponent, being annoying, and then you can follow up with big attacks when the time comes. So I score a Kadachi poke, and my opponent does not block. I then come in with the big attack, the Surging Strike. My opponent doesn't block, so I use Katsu, find a red Whelming Gust Wave, come in with the red Whelming Gust Wave for strength 4 with Go Again, draw on hit, and I do have a Razor Reflex in hand that could potentially buff that further. And if he does not block it, I can potentially get the card draw. This would actually be 2 card draws if it hits, so it's like really good, and I'm hoping that I manage to land this hit. And because I'll draw 1 from the actual Whelming Gust Wave combo, and then I'll draw 1 from the Mask of Momentum. So my opponent blocks for 5. And then I'm going to pitch my Torrent of Tempo and play the Razor Reflex, which is going to take me up to strength 7. And my opponent responds by pitching and playing a Shunt to shut down my attack. But I'm happy with that because that Shunt does cost 1 to play, and he didn't have any resources floating. He didn't have his Tunic charged up. He has to pitch another card from hand for that. So even though I didn't get in with my big stuff that I was trying to do, I nevertheless took my opponent down to just 1 card in hand. And that's a pretty good spot to be in when you're trying to maintain aggression. So now he's going to come in with a Dawnblade swing for 3. Once again, I'm just going to say, okay, no block, Show me if you want to use those bracers, or if you want to use those bolters, use those bolters. If not, I'm perfectly happy taking 3 here. And that's indeed exactly what I do, take 3. Now I'm going to try to continue my aggression. So I pitch a potion, Kadachi swing for 1 Go Again. Opponent takes it. Kadachi swing for 1 Go Again. Opponent takes it. I use my Tunic to play a Surging Strike. It's coming in at strength 5 with Go Again. If this hits, I'm going to be able to not only draw a card from my Mask of Momentum, but I'm also going to be able to do that search and potentially pull a Whelming Gust Wave and try that combo again. And if my opponent blocks it, I'm still going to be able to play that Soul Bead Strike from hand just for some bonus damage. So I'm in a pretty happy situation here. My opponent is going to go for the double block, so he's going to be able to shut that one down. I pass my attack reaction, and then I am going to play that Soul Bead Strike for 4, Go Again on hit. Opponent is not going to block, he's going to take 4. I'm fine with that. I now have a Sink Below in Arsenal. I took 2 cards out of his hand, and I did some damage. Pretty good turn for me. And I'm going to draw back up. I unfortunately do draw 2 copies of Art of War. However, I once again have a Sink Below that I can use to send one of those away if necessary. Opponent will be pitching a copy of Springboard Somersault here, and then comes in with a buffed up copy of the Dawnblade. He plays a Steelblade Supremacy and then comes in for 5. I block for 1 with Equipment and then play the Sink Below from Arsenal for 5, and I haven't used a card from hand, so Reprise isn't enabled. And then that is going to allow me to also get rid of the Art of War that I have, one of the copies of Art of War that I have in hand, and I draw a blue Whelming Gust Wave, which is pretty sweet. So this looks like a situation where playing the Art of War might be prudent. So I'm going to be able to do something at least semi-aggressive, and so I can do 2 Kadachi into at least 1 attack, and I can play this Art of War to buff that and also give me some more options. So, for instance, I could do blue pitch, Art of War, discard an attack, and draw 2, and then give attacks +1. And if I do choose to do that, that is going to allow me to see what my options are before I do further moves. So Art of War coming out, and I choose the attacks get +1, and then banish a attack and draw 2. I'm going to banish that blue Whelming Gustwave, getting 2 there, draw 2 cards. Not the best stuff here. I didn't see like new strong attacks that I could play, but I have some nice support cards here, so I'm going to go for the 2 Kadachi swings, followed up by the Soulbead Strike here for 5 because it is buffed up by the +1 from the Art of War, and additionally, if this hits, it will get Go Again, and additionally, if this hits, it will draw a card. My opponent goes for a block 5, so in this situation, I can use my Razor Reflex, which I do. That's going to take me up to 8, and if it hits, I will go again and draw a card. He doesn't have a defense reaction, so I do hit. Mask of Momentum triggers, and I draw a Command and Conquer, which unfortunately I can't follow up with, but which I can just throw into Arsenal to strengthen my position for the future. So that turn, I got some damage in. Didn't knock a lot out of his hand though, so this might be an opportunity for him to make a bit of a comeback. Let's see what happens on Will's next turn. Looks like a copy of Warrior's Valor Red being played. So this is going to give his Dawnblade +3, and if it hits, he will get Go Again. So Strength 6 with Go Again on that Dawnblade, not necessarily what you want to see. So the problem is I could block like this. Yeah, so I end up blocking like this, which is a block for 6. And he has an Ironsong response to hit me for 3. So I'm going to take 3. Then he's going to use his bracers, and then he's going to use his tunic to do a swing for 4. This is very awkward, but I'm like, you know what? This is an awkward hand. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm going to defend 2 from hand, and then I'm going to use this somersault to defend another 2. So I have now defended all 4, which does mean that I've stopped his turn here, and he's not going to get the counter, but it also means my next turn is just put a counter on Tunic and then go back to him, which is not necessarily what you want to be doing. Okay, so then we're seeing here the opponent's going to have a chance for a big turn. All I'm going to do is draw and pass back to him. So that's not what you most want to be doing in this game, especially against an aggressive deck like Warrior, but it's what I got to do in this circumstance. He leads off with an E-Strike, so this is probably going to be an E-Strike 5 Go Again. If he does a bigger E-Strike, it's a sign that he might be going for a Razor Reflex play. And yeah, it's 5 Go Again as I expect, so it's no block here, and I'm going to take 5. Okay, so then no block and take 5, and then my opponent follows up pitching a Steelblade Shunt and playing a Pursuit of Knowledge. So this is a very unusual card here. Actually, let me take this back a second and show you guys what this card is. It's not one that I think most people are necessarily familiar with. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Do I highlight that? Am I really not highlighting it? Rip. Sorry, I thought I had highlighted it, but I had actually highlighted the Steelblade Shunt, which is kind of silly instead. Anyway, this card comes in for 4 damage, and if it hits, it is going to give him +1 Intellect, which would mean he would drop to 5 at the end of the turn instead of 4. But I do actually just block it for 3 plus my Breaking Scales, or maybe it was my Breeze Rider Boots, whichever one I hadn't used. So I do block that up. Pitch an Empowerment, come in for 1. Use my Tunic to come in for 1, and then I'm going to play a Command and Conquer. This Command and Conquer for 6 is extra strong because if it hits, I am going to get a draw with Mask of Momentum. My opponent double blocks, which is pretty standard, but then this is going to allow me to put a Springboard Somersault into Arsenal, which is definitely a thing that I enjoy seeing. You really want to be sitting in that spot with a defense reaction in Arsenal. when a warrior attacks you. So no block against this Scar for a Scar, coming in at strength 4 with Go Again. He then plays a Ravenous Rabble and hits, I believe that's a yellow card, so this is going to be coming in at strength 3 with Go Again. I do opt to block that one, and that's it for the turn. He doesn't have any more energy. Might have been better just to pitch the Ravenous Rabble there to swing the Dawnblade, but there was the chance, of course, that he would get that for 4, so I'm going to pitch for 1 with Go Again, and then I'm going to pitch for 1 with Go Again, and then I'm going to play a potion. Not a terrible turn. Does a little bit of incremental damage. Now, the problem, of course, is that this is allowing him to get in a good position on tempo, but I have a defense reaction in arsenal and a defense reaction in hand, so I'm not feeling too bad about that. So now he's going to pitch, play the Spoils of War, play the Ironsong Determination, and swing his Dawnblade for a total of 6 damage with Go Again. So that is a scary prospect. I end up saying no block. I think I'm going to let him hit me with the first one and then try to stop the second one here, maybe. Or no, actually I go for the double defense reactions. Okay. So first I play the Flick Flack from hand, and then I play the Springboard Somersault from arsenal. That was technically kind of bad timing. I should have done the Flick Flack second, so that it would buff up a potential card from hand on the block if he had an attack reaction and came in for another hit. But so it goes. Alright, so now I am going to pitch and swing for 1. So I'm probably going to go just 1, 2, 3 here. So do the 2 Karachi pokes for 1 each, and then come in with the Magenshi release. And so this card is not having its combo enabled, so it's just an attack for 4. But if he gets hit by it, I can use the I can actually use my Breeze Rider boots to give it Go Again, and then actually discard the energy potion to find a copy of Lord of Wind, and potentially use that with the energy potion buffing it to let me do the buff. However, he decides he wants to stop that, and he actually overblocks it, blocking for 1 with his bolters, and then using the Springboard Somersault to block the remaining 4, which prevents me from landing a hit using Breaking Scales. So he has shut down my attack there. Now he's going to come in with Scar for a Scar, which is coming in here for a total of 4 damage with Go Again. This card's been quite annoying to me all game, and it's going to be annoying again, so I'm going to take 4. I decide, under the circumstances, I'm just going to take the damage. And then he's coming in with a Dawnblade swing for 3. I'm considering my options here. So I was just looking there to see how many parts of the Lord of Wind combo I had in the discard pile there. I end up deciding that I'm just going to go for a standard 3 block. Does end up shutting down his attack. He puts a card in arsenal. I'm thinking, okay. I have this. I have these E-Strikes in hand. E-Strike is a nice card. Pretty happy with the prospect of doing some E-Strike here. I also have a Razor, which means that I could potentially go for... So I could do like E-Strike pitching the other E-Strike. Or E-Strike sending the other E-Strike to the bottom of the deck, coming in for 7, and then I could potentially use my Potion or use my Tunic to Razor and then still do other stuff. But I'm not sure how much other stuff there is to do. Let's see how this one turns out. Sorry guys, I briefly lost chat there. Actually, as embarrassingly enough, my phone ran out of power. I'm usually looking at the chat on my phone here. So if anyone sent a chat in the last bit, I did not see it. Feel free to repeat any messages that were just sent. My apologies to you. I know that's bad streaming behavior or whatever, but I was not on it this time. Okay, so then I'm going to come in here with a E-Strike 7. E strike 7, fairly basic plan. And I do have the ability to potentially buff that with the Razor Reflex, depending on what he does here. It's possible for him. This is a great opportunity to just take some damage, though. If you're ever in a spot like this one, just taking the damage can be a good way to handle it, because that would allow him to then do a really big turn. Okay, so let's see what happens here. He's going to go for a block, blocking with the he blocks with the Singing Steel Blade, and I do play the Tunic to do a... I do use the Tunic to do a Razor Reflex. He plays a Springboard Somersault from Arsenal, which does not stop his attack, and then I'm going to use the Go Again to play an Energy Potion from Arsenal. Pretty sweet move in terms of getting me set up for the future, but it doesn't take any more cards out of his hand, so he still has an opportunity to do a relatively high tempo attack. You know, you really do want to be in these aggro versus aggro matchups. It can be really important to get cards out of your opponent's hand. And in this situation, he's still able to swing at me for 3 with 2 cards remaining, 2 energy. This is definitely a situation that's at least somewhat threatening. However, I do have this Flick Flack in hand, which makes me a little more confident. So I'm going to go for only a single block, and if he has an attack reaction, I can maybe mess with him with that Flick Flack. Let's see what happens here. He plays a Razor, so this is going to hit me for 3. But I think I'm just fine with that because he doesn't have a Go Again at this time. Now, he could, of course, break his bolters and then use just a second swing. I end up deciding that I want to use the Flick Flack here. I think it might have been better to let him hit me and then use his bolters on, to do the second swing and try to get those off the field. But, you know, it's one of those things. All right, so I now have, this looks like a bad situation for me in some ways with only 2 cards against my opponent's 5, 4 in hand and 1 in arsenal. But I do have those 2 potions that have been played, and that's going to allow me to do Kadachi, and then I'm going to use one of these potions for 2 energy, allowing me to play the Flying Kick. So then Flying Kick coming in for 7, and that's going to be pretty threatening with the life totals this low. A 7 damage Flying Kick, if the opponent does not block it substantially, is going to put him real close to the danger zone. In fact, he will be in the Razor Reflex danger zone, and he'll be pretty close to the Kadachi danger zone also. So at this point, I think my opponent is very likely going to have to do some defense here. He can't just take damage. He can't just tank this much damage at this time. And that's one of the benefits of those potions. You know, the energy, you know, 2 energy doesn't necessarily sound like that much, but having it stored up and being able to use it later on can be pretty impactful. So my opponent ends up deciding I'm gonna he triple blocks it. So he's gonna use not only 2 cards from hand, but he also uses the Arcanite Skullcap on its last block, and that way I don't get my card draw from Mask of Momentum, which is pretty reasonable, honestly. I think that was potentially a really big moment for me. So then he fires off the Ravenous Rabble and hits a blue and types wah wah in chat. Kind of an unfortunate moment. So Ravenous Rabble gets its strength decreased by the pitch value of the card that is on the top of your deck. So in that case, he comes in, and in theory you can do 4 if the top card is red, but in that case the top card is blue. So 5 minus 3 is 2, a strength 2 attack. I don't even have to block it, just take the damage. Now he comes in for an E-Strike 7. I'm thinking about my defense here. So I have actually what could be a pretty aggressive turn. It does involve playing that copy of Art of War. So what I could do here is, for instance, I could pitch the blue Find Center, play Art of War for exile and draw 2 on the blue Whelming Gust Wave. Then, or exile and draw 2, or I'm sorry, banish and draw 2, and then also get the +1. And then I can do a potentially quite aggressive turn. So I end up deciding, yeah, I'm just going to take the damage. Yes, it's a lot of damage, but it's just damage. So my opponent is now ahead of me on life, but I'm thinking this is my time to get ahead of him on tempo and take control of the end game here. So I'm going to go with the pitching the Find Center there. And as I was just discussing, giving the +1 and the banishing the Whelming Gust Wave to draw 2 cards. I do see a Soul Bead Strike and a CNC, so I could do Command and Conquer for 7, which would be really strong if he had a card in Arsenal. The problem is he doesn't have a card in Arsenal, so it's not that good. But what I am going to do is 2 Kadachi Swings. So the 2 Kadachi Swings, knocking him back a fair bit. So then I can do I could play this Whelming... So I have multiple things that I could do. So one thing I could do, I can play this Whelming Gust Wave, and this will actually come in for 4, and then if it hits, I'm going to be able to confirm it with the Breeze Rider Boots, and then I can pitch the Soul Bead Strike and play E-Strike 7, or I'm sorry, play Command and Conquer 7, which is pretty sweet. Additionally, if he blocks it exactly, I can give it this +1 with my Breaking Scales, which I still haven't used. So in this situation, we're seeing that I have a kind of awkward hand, but the fact that I still have some of my items unused is putting me in a position where I'm still offering a fair amount of threat, even with this attack that doesn't have its combo enabled. So my opponent, you can see his hand there in the bottom corner, looking at the Breeze Rider Boots. I think he's taking a look at that and just thinking, okay, there is still a threat from these items. What am I going to do about it? So now let's see what he chooses to do against this Whelming Gust Wave. So he ends up he actually goes for a double block. He's blocking 6. That is going to prevent me from getting in, even if I were to use the Breaking Scales. And that does mean the Breeze Riders aren't going to go off. I'm not going to be able to play that Command and Conquer this turn, but I can just put it into my arsenal and be in a position where I'm going to be having a relatively threatening turn next turn. And my opponent only has 2 cards, so I'm pretty happy with this situation. I have energy on board, but with the energy potion and my tunic about to be charged up, and I know I can do some combination of pitching Kadachi Swings and threatening attacks, which is a pretty good situation to be in. I know I have that Command and Conquer in Arsenal. He's coming in with the Dawnblade for 3. I have a Flick Flack in hand, which I can potentially use. One thing that I might want to do here is block with the Command and Conquer that I have in hand because it's redundant. I could also block with that Crane Dance. Either of those would be pretty reasonable. I could block with the Soul Bead also. I end up blocking with the Soul Bead. And this is going to allow me to keep that other copy of Command and Conquer and potentially threaten him with it later. So now I am going to charge up my tunic. Hopefully I don't forget that, or it would be really embarrassing. I do not forget it. And then I can pitch Crane Dance, Kadachi, use tunic, Command and Conquer, which is pretty strong. And then I can put the Flick Flack in Arsenal. So pretty scary situation. And these Kadachi pokes he's getting whittled down. He's at 8 life. Now he's at 7 life. I'm chipping away at him. 6 life. And then I'm going to use that tunic, use that, and play the Command and Conquer. I play the one from Arsenal instead of the one in hand. And the reason for that is that I want to put the Flick Flack in Arsenal so that I have a defense reaction that I can play from Arsenal in order to stop one of his attacks without threatening a potential, without enabling a potential reprise. And so he goes for a double block here, stopping the Command and Conquer. I'm just going to pass, and that double block does now mean that he has 3 cards for this turn, but I have, with a defense reaction in Arsenal and another CNC in hand, and I still have that potion, I'm feeling pretty good about the situation, quite frankly. Okay. Let's see what happens next. Looks like he's going to come in here with a Dawnblade Swing. Dawnblade Swing here. Coming in for 3 damage. So I'm thinking about how I want to run my turn. I still have that Flick Flack in Arsenal. I do have an all red hand, which is awkward, but I have that potion, which is going to make it a little less awkward. For instance, I can potion for Surging Strike and then pitch one of the cards in my hand to play the Torrent of Tempo. And if that's my plan, I could easily block with just this Flying Kick, for instance. The Flying Kick is probably the most awkward of the cards that I have in my hand right now. I could also potentially take the damage and then use the potion to play use the potion to play the Surging Strike, and then play the pitch both of the other cards and play Command and Conquer. But in this case, he comes in with an Ironsong response to try to hit me past the block, but I have the Flick Flack to counter it. I think he's now searching, and I don't know what he's looking for here, but he's probably looking to see how many defense reactions I've used. Often, I think a good tactic as warrior is to try to figure out how many defense reactions your opponent has left. Okay. So this is these all red hands. These are a great opportunity to use that potion, and I do end up going for the play that I was discussing earlier, where I think I'm going to go for potion into the Surging Strike for 5, go again. And then I'm going to be able to pitch the Command and Conquer to play the Torrent of Tempo for 5 go again on hit. I won't have any ability to actually use that go again, but just threatening this much damage is pretty good when my opponent's this low. All right, so he is going to block this one. He blocks for 5. I'm fine with that. Just a pass, and then here comes the Torrent of Tempo. 5 go again on hit. He could just take the hit here and go down to 1 life. It's totally possible. The problem with doing that is that it then puts him in the Kadachi, in the, like, I have to block every Kadachi swing place, which is a very bad place to be in against a ninja. He says no resources, right? I say right. So the reason that's relevant is if I had a resource floating, I would be able to follow this up with a Kadachi swing if it hits. And then that would potentially be more damage. But unfortunately, I did have that all-red hand. However, thanks to that energy potion, this all-red hand still ended up threatening 10 damage, which is a pretty strong thing to do with an all-red hand that actually used some defense as well. Okay. He's looking at his card in arsenal. He's thinking about his options. Let's see what happens here. He ends up going for a block with the... He blocks with his... he blocks 1 life with his Brave Forge Bracers so that he goes down to 2 instead of 1. Then he's going to just swing a Dawnblade swing at me for 3. I'm gonna block with this flying kick, I think, and then I can do pitch Kadachi into the crane dance. So he pitches for a Razor Reflex coming in for another 3, but I have a sink below in hand that I'm gonna be able to use to just counter that. And I say no sink. So this is gonna, the reason that I want to counter that, even though it's just damage, is because he would be able to use his his bolters for go again. Though actually he doesn't have energy, so maybe I should have just let this hit. I don't know. It's possible that I should have just let this hit because I actually don't think that he has a follow-up. But that's okay. It might have been good for me to take the hit and then put that in arsenal. Although there is, or like make him show me some other attack reaction that could potentially kill me or whatever. Okay, that's fair though. I think in this case I'm going to go Kadachi. He blocks with his tunic. Second Kadachi coming in. He takes 1. He's at 1 life, and then I'm going to play the crane dance here. So crane dance coming in. This is a no combo enabled, so it's just strength 3. It is a red crane dance. And he ends up going for a block for 3, and then I finally use my breaking scales to go up to 4. So this is going to poke him for 1 damage and kill him if he doesn't have a defense reaction. Let's see if he has it. He says, "Forgot that had combo. GG." Not I think what he was hoping for. So in that case, I do think that I messed up a little bit with using that sink below on the last turn. I think I should have saved it, and then I would have had it in arsenal so that if he had survived this, I would be able to. If he had survived this turn, I would be able to throw out a. I would be able to defend myself a little more confidently. I think I was overly concerned with him potentially having another Dawnblade attack, which was actually unlikely. So a bit of an error there, but I still ended up winning the game. So pretty happy with that. My opponent says, "Man, the fact that you can run 9 defense reactions and not slow down is sick. Which warrior could do that?" Yeah. So the 9 defense reaction, the funny thing is I do actually think this deck has slowed down by putting these defense reactions in. It's normally much more aggressive than this, but having them is certainly helpful in this warrior matchup where there's stuff that you have to stop. So he is going to lose the roll off, and I decide to go second, and then as a adaptation to going second, I cut down to 2 energy potions instead of 3. And Will says, if I run more than 6 defense reactions he's referring to, then my deck feels so slow. Yeah, that's true. Having a bunch of defense reactions can really clog up your hand. One thing that I think really helps is running the good old Springboard Somersault, which I actually like over the more conventional 0-cost block for 4 defense reactions, because that 2 energy that you can get by pitching Springboard Somersault is really good. I think the upgrade from red to yellow is worth it, even though it means that it's less reliable if you haven't set it up in Arsenal. A lot of the time you want to be setting up defense reactions in Arsenal anyway, and when you're dealing with the decks that you most want the defense against, most notably the Warrior and the Guardian. I think against both of those decks, you often want to set up defense reactions in Arsenal to counter Reprise and Dominate. Okay. In any case, I am going to. So he just arsenals and ends turn, I believe, and then I'm going to do a Karachi swing for 1 with go again, and then I follow that up with a torrent of tempo for 5 go again on hit. I had a very awkward hand here. I believe it's an all red hand. He says no floating. I said correct. He is going to block for 5. So I think he might have overblocked this if he was worried about a razor. Doesn't need to worry about it. Doesn't need to worry about it. So, bit of an awkward hand. I do end up chipping a point of damage in with the Karachi and making him block a bit, but nothing great. My opponent's definitely gonna have the opportunity to get the tempo of the game on his side with this move. So now he's going to pitch up a Singing Steel Blade here, giving him 2 energy or 2 resources or whatever it's called, and then he's going to swing in a Dawnblade attack for 3. I say no block. He's going to pass. And then I have 3 defense reactions, which is kind of crazy. So I end up using the Sink Below from Arsenal because it won't enable a reprise. And then I'm going to use the actual Sink Below effect to put one of those defense reactions back and get another option. I end up hitting a Magenshi release. So this is a time when I think I may end up going with the Art of War. That's right. I'm asking my opponent to make sure he's fine with me getting my tunic there. So that's a thing. You definitely have to learn to remember this for tournaments. You have to use your tunic. You have to use your tunic before you do other stuff. So in that case, I pitched and then did the tunic, which is wrong. So I asked, are you okay with me getting tunic there? He said, of course. And I was like, cool. So then I'm going to use the +1 and banish. So I get the +1 damage, 1 for go again. I have a once again Art of War not really giving me what I want here. I drew even more defense. This is ironic because my opponent was talking about how this deck doesn't slow down with all the defense, but it is actually getting slowed down here. So I end up deciding that I'm going to just pitch like that to do the flying kick for 6. I could have pitched the other Sink Below, swung the second Karachi, and then done flying kick for 8. But I prefer to have the Sink Below in Arsenal in this matchup. And the flying kick ends up landing for 6. So I did do a fair chunk of damage, but my opponent now has his tempo filled up. He just refilled his tunic, and he has a 4-card hand plus card in Arsenal. So I'm now going to have to deal with some potentially heavy damage. I end up not blocking against a Scar for a Scar. Opponent pitches and comes in with a Dawnblade for 3. And so against this, I'm going to no block. He passes, I pass. I'm just going to take 3. I'm fine with that. That's a pretty good situation. He may have had an awkward hand here or whatever. Didn't have a way to give that Dawnblade go again unless he wanted to use his Bolters. But, yeah. So now I say, okay, let's try that again. And I'm going to go for the Art of War play, hoping this time that I'm going to get something else. Amusingly, I also banish a Magenshi release again, which does mean I now need to be careful because I only have 1 Magenshi release left in the deck. So if I want to be able to do that combo, I have to be sure to save that Magenshi release and not use it to defend with. I'm then going to go with a Karachi swing for 1. Follow it up with an E-Strike 6. Since it does have the +1, this is going to be an E-Strike 6 with go again. And then I'm going to be able to follow that up with that Torrent of Tempo for 6, go again on hit, and also draw on hit unless he fully blocks the E-Strike 6 here, which is unlikely but possible. Okay, let's see what's going on here. My opponent's thinking about how to respond to this E-Strike 6. This is an annoying thing to be faced with. He ends up deciding no blocks. I pass attack reactions, And so 6 damage lands. Then I'm going to follow it up with Torrent of Tempo for 6. And if this hits, I'm going to get a card draw from my Mask of Momentum. So a very, very threatening turn here. You know, and no matter what this card draw is, it would potentially allow more aggression, even if it's just pitch whatever it is to swing the Kadachi for 1. So overall, very, very threatening. My opponent says no blocks, attack reactions to you. I say pass. He is going to use his Tunic to play a blue Shunt, blocking for 4, and then he also uses a Springboard Somersault from Arsenal, so he blocks for 8 total. Okay, so now he's going to pitch another blue Shunt, I believe, to come in with a Dawnblade swing for 3. So that's, you know, that may explain his awkward attack previously. You know, he had, it looks like, 3 defense reactions at the same time, which is really not what you want as Warrior in one of these matchups where you're trying to be aggro. So once again, he has a Dawnblade swing with no means of giving it go again other than his bolters. I'm going to just say, okay, hit me. You know, you want to use your bolters, go and use it. I'm totally fine with just taking the damage there, not blocking, and coming back with an aggressive turn. And here we go. Aggressive turn with Kadachi. That's going to be to start off, that's 2 damage as he does take both hits. I'm then going to do an E-Strike. E-Strike 5, go again. Will also draw and hit. Opponent blocks for 5. And then I'm going to do this Soulbead Strike for 2, and if it hits, go again also. I believe I also play that. Or no, I don't. I hold it. So I could actually have played that for 2. But I don't do so. And I think the reason is that I wanted to make sure I had a blue for the next hand. I think debatably I should have played it just for the damage, or I should have done E-Strike 7 instead of doing the go again. So a bit of a mistake there. He ends up going for 4 go again with his Ravenous Rebel. No block, I take 4. Against these little go again attacks from a Warrior, you often want to just take the damage, and it's tough, you know, especially if you're low on life, it can be risky to take that damage, but you usually want to save your defense for their Dawnblade attack, which is going to have the scarier on hit. Even if they play a life for a life where you have to block, and if you don't block, you're going to, the opponent is going to heal. It's often best to just not block and let them heal, which I know might sound kind of crazy, but those little go-again attacks that a Warrior plays before the rest of their stuff, those are often kind of side tracks to the main event, and you want to save your defense for the big stuff, which is going to be often the Dawnblade. So in this situation, my opponent swings Dawnblade for 3, I block. He plays a Glint for go again, he does get the draw, and then he's going to follow that up with an E-Strike. E-Strike 5 and draw. So now he's going to draw a card. And I'm going to take 5. Alright. And it is not a card that he wants to Arsenal, though, so he doesn't do so, which means that I'm pretty happy. He could have done more damage to me. That draw card on E-Strike is kind of a gamble, because there is that chance that you're going to draw something that is a poor card to have in Arsenal, like a blue card that isn't that like if you drew like a blue, I don't know, like if I drew a blue Ironsong response, that would not be a very good card to have in Arsenal. Okay, so then I go for 2 Kadachi swings, and then a red Whelming Gust Wave for 3. Once again, I'm thinking about potentially using those reactions to hit him harder, but he does end up over blocking it, so I'm like, fine. You know, that's an okay situation. You know, if he wants to do that, let him do it. And now that is going to just use up more of his stuff for later. 21 life to 21 life. Definitely still anyone's game at this point. My opponent has 3 cards with which to put up an attack. Ends up going for 5 go again. Five go again. I block for 1, and then I use my Sink Below that I've had in Arsenal this whole time. Thinking about what I want to sink here. I'm thinking between the Surging Strike and the Flying Kick, which one do I want to use and which one do I want to sink? I end up deciding that I'm going to go for the Surging Strike on this turn, so I sink the Flying Kick, and then get my replacement draw, which is another Ancestral Empowerment. Pretty sweet to have 2 Ancestral Empowerments in hand. Let's see what I can do with them. So looking at this, I think most likely this is going to be Pitch Potion, Kadachi Swing into the Surging Strike. That's exactly what we see. Pitch Potion coming in, Kadachi coming in for 1 with Go Again. Opponent takes it, and now Surging Strike for 5, and I have 2 Ancestral Empowerments in hand. Opponent is going to... He actually just takes 1 immediately, thinking it's another Kadachi Swing. Kind of on autopilot there from the incessant Kadachi pokes. And he says, "Whoops, sorry, I was in auto mode, lol." Yep, no problem. That's sometimes you just get used to a pattern, and yeah. And that's actually one of the benefits also of breaking up the pattern sometimes and varying it, which Ninja can do. It's pretty can be pretty annoying. Can be pretty annoying. All right, so what's he gonna do? Here comes that Surging Strike coming in for 5. If he does not block this, or if he blocks this for exactly 5, I can confirm the hit with my with an Ancestral Empowerment. He ends up not blocking. I pass the attack reactions. That's going to let me use Katsu's ability, discard one of the Ancestral Empowerments, search. Let's get that Whelming Gust Wave red. I think I still have 1 left in there. Yep. So I'm only running 3 blues and 2 reds that card. The reds are the ones that you want for doing the combo, and the blues are the ones that you want for pitching and potentially blocking. The cool thing about the red is that it does come in for 4 once you're doing the combo, which means that it's going to cross that breakpoint there, the 4 damage breakpoint, where it's not easy to block with one thing unless they have a defense reaction. So now the Whelming Gust Wave with combo enabled coming in, strength 4 with Go Again, and if this hits, it will draw me another card, and I have in hand that copy of Ancestral Empowerment to try to buff it up, and I also have that Breaking Scale, so even if he overblocks this by 1, which he's done against some of these attacks in the past, I'm going to be actually able to take it up by 2, and if I can score that hit, it will also get me 2 draws. I'm going to get 1 from the mask and 1 from the Whelming Gust Wave itself, so this is actually a pretty dangerous attack, and my opponent is going to block, so he blocks for 5, so he's overblocking it by 1. He's using 1 card, 1 piece of armor, or 1 card and 2 pieces of armor. So I ask, defend 5? He says, yup, and then I'm going to go for the Ancestral Empowerment from hand. That's also going to draw me a card, and I draw another Ancestral Empowerment. And at this point, I'm going to use the Breaking Scales. Debatably, I should have used the Ancestral Empowerment there, but I want to save it. So then this is going to come in. I have crossed to hit him for 1, so then I get a draw from Whelming, and then I get a draw from Mask of Momentum. And I'm going to be able to pitch and play a Flying Kick for 7. So this has been a very aggressive turn, and I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy with this outcome right now. Or actually, I pitch and Kadachi for 1, using that other Kadachi, which I never played, and then I Flying Kick for 7. So lots of attacks there. I think that was a total of 5 attacks this turn, even though 2 of them were just Kadachi pokes. But just tons of damage going out, and I still have that Ancestral Empowerment that I can potentially arsenal here. Or I could play it here for the bonus damage, but I think I'm going to arsenal it and try to use it in the future to maybe get a attack that has combo to score the hit so that I can use the Breeze Rider boots and get more attacks. So that big turn has put me way ahead on life. I was mentioning earlier that we're pretty even on life, but now it's 21-6. And additionally, his armor is all depleted except for his tunic, while I still have a point of armor on my Breeze Rider boots, my tunic, and my mask. But he has kept a lot of cards, so this could be a chance for him to come back. He still has a fair amount of tempo. Unfortunately, his Ravenous Ramble is going to hit a blue and only come in for 2 damage with Go Again. So I'm fine with that. End up taking 2. I'm like, what of it? And he pitches a Pursuit of Knowledge and then comes in with the Dawnblade for 5. Buffed up by a copy of Steelblade Supremacy. I block with the Breeze Rider boots only, and then I'm going to throw a defense reaction here. The Flick Flack coming in, blocking for 4, and it's also going to buff my next block if I end up blocking with that Crane Dance. So I've now blocked him for 5. Doesn't have an attack reaction, or at least not one that he wants to use here. And so I end up stopping that attack, and now it's going to be back to me. I'm feeling pretty good about this situation right now. Now the only problem is I don't have an incredible attack here, but I could still do, so I have the Ancestral Empowerment in Arsenal. So one thing that I could do is I could pitch the potion, Kadachi into the Crane Dance. Another thing that I could do is I could pitch the Crane Dance, Kadachi, and then play the potion. But I think that I want to do the game plan that involves playing the Crane Dance, because then I can potentially use the Ancestral Empowerment on it to get that Springboard Somersault into Arsenal. So Karachi. He gets hit both times. And then I'm going to play the Crane Dance. This is actually a blue Crane Dance, so it's only 1 damage. Its combo is not enabled. So I'm swinging at him for 1, which is not really the finest situation ever. But, damage is damage. He blocks for 2. So I can also use the I can actually use the Ancestral Empowerment here and hope to top deck a Razor. So I do use the Ancestral Empowerment, which is kind of silly. I don't top deck Razor. And then no further AR, I say. So the main reason that I did that was actually not for the lucky top deck, that it would have been cool if I got it, but just to put the Springboard Somersault into my arsenal, which I then do. So now it's going to be, my opponent will have a chance to be aggressive this turn, which I don't like. He has a full or he has a 3-card hand plus a he has a 3-card hand plus a card in arsenal. So then he's going to come in with another Steelblade Supremacy turn. I actually block with my mask here because I've decided it's very unlikely that I'm going to get any more in a mask trigger at this point, since my opponent's only at 4 life. And that's going to allow me to block with the mask and then play the Springboard Somersault from Arsenal to defend for 6. And because I've defended for 6 and I have not used any cards from hand, his Reprise is not enabled. So if he has a copy of Ironsong Response, he can't play it, and if he has a Singing Steelblade, he can play it for +1, but I'm still going to block the full attack. And actually, that is so demoralizing or whatever to my opponent that he just says GG. So that is going to be the game. So as we saw, 3 games with my aggro ninja that is supposed to be able to adapt and fight warrior, and I lost the first game after I had a lead, but I got way too aggressive, let attacks in that I didn't need to let in, and then the Art of War didn't end up setting me up in the way that I had hoped. And then in the second 2 games, I was able to be victorious. So definitely better results than I think Aggro Ninja sometimes gets against Warrior, but this deck is still experimental, and I'm still thinking about it. One thing that I noticed is that I do feel like I don't have all the aggression that I want with this build. So there were definitely a few awkward turns, times when I had to rely on Art of War draws. I think that just having fewer of the attack actions, because I'm trying to avoid those 2 blocks, does put me in a somewhat awkward position sometimes. So I have to think about, how I might want to adapt this build and maybe do a little better in the future. I think this was good, but I think there may be further steps to take to try to get a little more aggression into the deck. So that is that's an interesting little thing there. When I post this on YouTube, I am going to post a link to the deck list that I was using, and then people can check that out, maybe suggest comments. The main thing to know about it is that the sideboard plan involves swapping out a bunch of the attacks in order to put in more defense reactions when playing against Warrior, and I thought that was effective in allowing me to have like a solid defense. But at the same time, I did feel like I had a little less reliable aggression than I would prefer with a ninja build. So I may need to think about other things that I could do. Maybe I'm gonna leave those red leg taps in, but I'm gonna cut the maybe I'm gonna cut the plunder runs. Maybe there's some other thing like that that I'm going to remove that is going to allow me to have a little more consistency with having the attacks, while at the same time not making it so that I have more 2 blocks against the warrior. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this stream, guys. That was 3 quick games of Classic Constructed, about half an hour each, actually a little bit less. The clip was 1 hour and 17 minutes. So, Classic Constructed can be a fast format, if both players are, both of us are, I think, pretty experienced, both with the game as a whole and with Tabletop Simulator. So it's definitely a situation where we are able to play relatively quickly, but it also helps that we were both being very aggressive. I think if I was playing Fatigue Ninja, it is very unlikely that I would be able to be completing 3 games in this time. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you to you guys for watching, and we're going to be back with whatever incidental streams may come up, just based on games that I think are cool, online events, things like that. However, we are also going to have the scheduled stream, the so-called Live at 5 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays Pacific. I will be streaming more of my own recorded gameplay with commentary like this one, so stay tuned for that. Next stream will be Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. if not sooner. You know, if there's something incidental that comes up before then, we'll be seeing some other stuff. We'll be seeing some other stuff at that time. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. We'll be back later. Enjoy, enjoy the weekend as it comes up now. And yeah, catch you guys later.